I'll just go quickly here. So I'm Mark Balabanian. I work at Magnite, which was formed from the merger of the Rubicon project and Talaria. Magnite is the world's largest independent sell-side platform, covering every channel, every format, every device, and is really a leading alternative to walled gardens because we're unconflicted. We don't own any media. We don't operate a demand-side platform. We're purely on the sell-side platform. Now, with my teams, we develop partnerships with demand-side platforms. That's one of my roles, but also with brands. And though Magnite is a sell-side platform, we do not only serve the interests of publishers. On the contrary, we have learned and proven that by creating value for buyers, that actually grows demand for programmatic digital media, and that benefits publishers. So we really invest a lot in technology, tools, service, and transparency for buyers. And we're working collaboratively with many brands that have in-house their programmatic strategy and their execution even, because those brands especially have discovered that through the optimization of their supply paths, we can materially help them to impact their ROI. So with that said, I am thrilled to be speaking with one of the leaders in the in-housing movement, Mr. Paul Gelb of Bayer. And Paul, it is great to see you, my friend. I'm sure you are well known throughout the brand innovators community, but for those of you that may not be familiar, just go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know a little about yourself.
Sure. So there was a long intro at the beginning, some of which that was true, but I appreciate the praise. But right now, I can tell you that I've been leading the in-housing effort at Bayer in terms of activation, all of our ad buying, our investment with our key platforms and partnerships, as well as what we call marketplace analytics. So all of our analysis of inventory, audiences, creative ad format that informs our whole roadmap and testing plan moving forward. So all three of those functions as we brought our digital operations in-house.
That sounds like an awful lot of responsibility. And we're going to dive into that. But before we do, I was actually thinking back on the last time that I saw you. It was a very different world back then. We were together at a VIP event in Cabo San Lucas, naively eating grilled octopus and guzzling tequila and pontificating on panels together about the programmatic advertising without a care in the world. And that was really like the first week of March. So fast forward to today, I am literally working out of a closet here in San Francisco to avoid the hazardous smoke and deadly virus that are lurking outside. And everything has really changed since Cabo. I'd say with one exception, I am still wearing shorts and flip-flops. It's below the fold, so nobody else has to see that. But that's how I get by here, working out of a very hot closet. So with that being said, I am thrilled to be pontificating with you yet again under any circumstances, including these. So let's get into it, man.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about what drew you to your role at Bayer. It was a change in your career, having come from working deeply in the programmatic ecosystem. What drew you to the role?
So I'd been pretty much everywhere in the ecosystem except for the end advertiser side of things. And what I had seen as I was evaluating my next move was just how exciting it was in terms of all these different trends coming to a head and converging, where brands were suddenly pursuing and had the opportunity to build their ad tech stack and their approach and strategy and a team in-house from the ground up, and still leverage their scale and their other existing infrastructure in order to really move quickly with whatever you built on the digital media side in-house. What we added to that was a company like Bayer that had such a rich history of data and science and appreciation for people in those fields, with a mission of healthcare for all, of really serving the underserved and looking out 20, 30 years from now, and how many people may not have access to healthcare that we take for granted even today. And when you put all those things together of the opportunity to really build something and have an impact within that culture and that history of innovation, it seemed like a really exciting opportunity to jump into.
Oh, for sure. It's the fruition of, I think, so many things. Like you and I go back quite a ways. I think we first started working together 8 years ago when you were at MoPub, a leading supply side platform. I was at Turn, then a leading demand side platform and data management platform. And back in those early innings of the programmatic game, there was this theory that technology would eventually empower marketers to take more ownership and control over their digital investments and their trading even. And a lot of that now has come to fruition. And as the universe of digital media and programmatic have really expanded, in-housing just became so much more viable. And so I could see why that was a compelling move for you, and something exciting to be at the forefront of, because as long as I know you, you've always been an innovator. You've always been an early mover on things. And so I think you're right in the playbook. And so talk a little bit about how your background as a programmatic insider may have prepared you to orchestrate this in-housing effort at Bayer.
Well, to be fair, actually, I think the first time we met in person was my first panel on programmatic ever, and I think I had a cheat sheet with all the acronyms because I was coming over from mobile, and we were just excited to get an ad on the phone. So I was even probably a bit late compared to the desktop folks of coming into programmatic. But I think that scrappiness of being in mobile and having the last 5 minutes maybe of a presentation and having a very a feature-rich and capability-poor device, and trying to put all those pieces together on what the user experience was, how to operationalize it, with a little bit of context of the desktop, allowed me to run pretty quick going into that space. But I was fortunate also to just be at leading companies throughout the ad tech stack, and what I sometimes refer to as a really bad game of telephone. And so having seen behind all those walls, all the way from the agency to the buy side platform, sell side platform, helping publishers, and it really, I think, allowed me to have a view and bring all that knowledge that was in silos into an actual buyer perspective, and see things and know things that you could never know just being a buyer going through all those sorts of loops. So in each stop, I've been fortunate to have really smart people and to learn a ton about how each component works and the impact it has on your investment and the effectiveness of your spend.
Oh, for sure. You know where some of the bodies are buried, and that's for sure useful. Now, I bet there were some blind spots for you, some learning curves, and some big surprises. So, what was it like going from all those experiences to becoming an advertiser?
So it had been a while since I was on the agency side, and even really working at transforming a lot of large companies' business and to become more digital. And some of the work I was doing 10 years ago, more on the agency side. And I think one of the things that I realized pretty early was, one, just all the things that you needed to do to change a large organization, particularly outside the tech sector. Having worked at some of the big tech platforms, you start to realize all the things that they put in place that continue to change and evolve at that speed of technology that is moving. And then to go to a large company that had tons of talent, very motivated, great cause, great products, but all the ways and some of the things that you had to bring from that experience in order to operate and have change, not just change, but change that is sustained. Large companies I compare to a little bit of rubber, a little bit of a live organism, in that as you change them, they are built from the ground up to avoid disruption or change, and will just automatically return to their original form. And so if you make big changes, they'll snap back. So a lot of things I had to sort of relearn were the things that you had to put in place to create change processes, scale different ways of doing things, looking at different metrics, and having them sustained and scaled across the organization as new ways of doing things. It's really easy to go back to what was comfortable and the old ways of doing things. So that was definitely one of the learning curves. And even simple things like billing or some of these small, what you perceive as smaller administrative tasks, just have not been neck deep in all the digital transformation and new ways of doing things. So making sure you spend enough time, attention, and tap into all the people who know how it's done now in order to make those changes and make them last.
That sounds like it's been a journey. We're going to get into the journey here, talk about some of that in a minute. First, let me just set the stage by saying, for Magnite, Gretchen, who led the conversation earlier, and myself, we work actively with marketers that have brought programmatic, their strategy, and in many cases, their execution in-house. And we have experienced firsthand through those engagements that the pace of in-housing is accelerating. We're partnering with brands across so many diverse verticals, whether it's CPG, pharma, travel, telcos, tech, entertainment, financial services, you name it. And we talk about this a lot. There just isn't really a stereotype of the marketer that opts for in-housing. The thing that those in-housers seem to have in common, however, is a real strong motivation for greater visibility, choice, and control to ultimately achieve a greater return on investment. And so let's, if you can, unpack a little bit, what is Bayer's motivation for in-house, and why did Bayer elect to be one of those early movers?
From the top down and the bottom up, there is a cultural imperative for marketing excellence and to be best in class. And so this was just one of the many things that leadership has leaned into doing and to deliver on that, to be faster, better, and more efficient in everything that we do. And the closeness that you have from this increasingly important function or area of running a business today, to the brand, the business, to our retail customers, to our insights team that know our customers inside and out, and not having those silos or divisions from being an external company, it just really allows you to improve against those metrics that get you to operational and marketing excellence and really unprecedented outcomes and performance. If you don't have those hurdles, you can start to move a lot faster, use a lot more information, data, and numbers, and work in new ways that you just can't, given the nature of that information and what you need to do with an external vendor. So I think it's a microcosm a bit of the larger decisions that are really important that you have to make around what do you want to really centralize and have a small working team where there aren't silos and barriers, and centralized information working close hand in hand. And then when and how do you want to extend that to other business groups and other business teams and have more of a diversified model. And so the same thing is with our partners and our vendors and our agencies versus what we do in-house, as well as what we do from a centralized structure in Bayer versus what we sort of diversify across different functions and say, we set you up with guardrails, process, guidelines, and we're going to decentralize this sort of work. So I think it's up to every business to what they can do better and feel like they can handle in-house, and what makes more sense to decentralize and outsource or have someone else do. But for us, the activation part and reporting and measurement were definitely key components that we thought made sense for us to do in-house.
Got it. So let's talk about the journey. Talk about kind of the major milestones and moves that you've made. Walk us through the progression. It's been almost a couple years now, let's unfold that for the group. I'm sure there's a lot of interest.
Thanks thanks to the leadership and the culture that we have at Bear, it really did feel like almost a startup entrepreneurial endeavor where we were building from a handful of people, getting past the way of just this is the way that it has been done and has always been done, and really having a blank slate, being data-driven, data-led in terms of how we want to do things, what we wanted to do, and really a robust test and learn approach, and that sort of exploratory, almost like a product market fit if you're starting a startup today, of exactly figuring out your strategy, your approach, and what works and what you want to do different than what many of the big guys were doing today, because it was a better way of doing things now. And then it moved on from how do we scale this? How do we invest more in it? What are the gaps and capabilities that we need to put in place? What resources do we need over the next year, 2 years, et cetera? And really, how big is this sort of opportunity, and where can we go with it? And fleshing out all those sorts of scenarios. Once we had our core set, was sort of phase 2. The phases past that are a bit of a blur because we've been moving so fast. I think we did those initial stages fairly well and in a very centralized, coordinated way that allowed us to really run quickly. And of course, however fast we were running, we almost got a jetpack put on our back around 6 or 7 months ago when COVID hit, and just the imperative for self-care and our mission became that much stronger. And so the adoption and the speed in which trends were happening everywhere we turned was just happening faster. So suddenly everything that we thought we were already doing faster than we could even imagine, we wound up going up another speed level or two while doing that remotely. And so, but I'm really could not be more proud of the team and the people we brought in place, given COVID and being remote and the uncertainty around school and just how flexible we've all been with timelines to actually even speed up despite all the potential disruption and hurdles and how you could execute that we never could have predicted or known before. But it's been full speed ahead, and now it's really, I think, thinking about how do we take what's worked and how we do things and some of the approaches and strategies and ways of working, and bring that to the other parts of the business and start to integrate what we're doing really well to the other parts of our business and how we interact with our customers. And that's actually really exciting because it's completely new to me, and some really talented people get to have work sessions, work closely with them, become conversant in their side of the business, make them conversant in digital, and leverage the fluency of our team to come up with some really exciting ways that we could use what we're good at in digital media to drive some of the other tactics and initiatives that we're working on.
Well, you spoke a bit about how, things just accelerated because of the issues and things happening this year. I mean, it's been an eventful year, and we're not even, we've got another whole quarter to go. There's just been so many forces disrupting the status quo for both marketers and consumers, right? On top of the pandemic with social distancing and distance learning, we've got consumers and marketers that are being confronted with major issues, racial injustice, right? Climate change, the impacts we're seeing it here up and down the West Coast is just on fire. So behaviors and priorities and budgets are changing for sure. And do you feel like being in-house has allowed you to maybe have an advantage in this changing environment due to the greater visibility, nimbleness, and control you might have?
Nimbleness for sure. I think anyone who's operated in a vertical where there's been an acceleration of e-commerce and shifting of channels and where consumers are shopping and how they're shopping, would say that nimbleness and the speed in which you can execute is a tremendous advantage in this environment. What I would say is just some of the ways of working that we had put in place hiring a lot of people that came from tech companies and startups and bringing what I learned not only at those companies, but based off of people I worked for and mentors, reading everything that Andy Grove had, et cetera, on how to be an effective executive and operate effectively as a team, despite various unknowns in a changing environment. Having all that already in place really allowed us to not only move at that speed, and move at that speed within an organization like Bayer, but I think do it really well and excel in this environment in ways that it would have been very reasonable to say, hey, there's so much going on, chalk it up to just a crazy year and a crazy environment. But I think the team has actually thrived once all these ways of working really became even that much more of an impact and in helping us and deliver business success.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's get a little bit into some of the nitty gritty of what what in-housing really means and some of the work that you're doing. Like many of the teams that we work with at Magnite are looking for more efficient media buying. At the end of the day, what they really are trying to accomplish is getting more consumers and selling more of their products. And the in-house team at Bayer has done a tremendous job utilizing programmatic tools and really honing in on the KPIs to drive results. Can you talk a bit about how programmatic strategies and the various KPIs that you care for translate into sales results, and how has that success empowered your in-housing initiative?
Sure. Well, I mean, the key ways of working and what we brought from a lot of our tech platform and startup backgrounds was things like OKRs and ways of being accountable and transparent. And you add that sort of intellectual curiosity of the team, and you have a great focus of understanding that there are metrics to say if something worked or not, and there's a ownership of budget in terms of where we're spending money, where we're spending our time and our bandwidth, where you don't have as many situations that I used to experience on the agency side, where you were essentially just checking off boxes and trying to chase the last shiny thing and just be there. I think we saw that just being there is where you can really go awry, and it can be a slippery slope. But if you are very purposeful in how you're spending your dollars, your strategy, and your approach, and you have this philosophy that your intent is to continually to iteratively get better and learn from the last one and improve your performance and understand where the metrics are today that you can actually execute and do that. That's really been key to our success, and a little bit different than I think most marketers or marketing departments look at things. It's a perspective that's more taking manufacturing and operations and bringing it to a service or a marketing type function. And I've seen that be extremely successful at tech giants and some of these startups that have become decacorns and scaled really quickly. And so applying it here, it's same sort of way. And it's allowed us, I think, to tackle each channel as they've integrated that into our in-house operations, to tackle unknowns in certain environments like e-commerce and the COVID environment. So having that KPI structure and that sort of philosophy of how we work, and it's a little bit different than traditional marketing, has paid off here, and really everywhere we turn, I think has been key to our consistency.
So you mentioned just being there isn't always, ideal. So I've got to ask about social, right? Many marketers have been rethinking their social investments. I read in July, Bayer had paused paid media on Facebook. Were you able to, again, sort of evaluate social in a more nimble way and be more decisive in particular, because maybe through your in-housing, you're just not as reliant on any technology provider or media provider as you might otherwise be?
Yeah, I think there a lot has been said and written, and you could probably Google it, but I'd defer you to what leadership in our comms said about the stance that we took in July. But what I can say is that your partners are extremely important, and they've been key to our success. Who we've decided to really lean in and partner with in terms of the company and the people at those companies that we work with day to day and try and build something. I think there are expectations inherently in how our partners do business, as well as when you're talking about strategic partners. You desperately don't want to be overly reliant on anyone. That's true in any business or any part of what you're doing. You want to have that flexibility and not have a gatekeeper be over influencing your business outcomes. At the same time, you want to consolidate and have a large enough partnership where you're giving your contacts and the people that you work with on the other side of things the ability to get their resources, finance, and everything on their side to actually lean in and in earnest, really build something new with you and provide you the type of support that is high impact and meaningful. So we always are trying to have that balance of making sure we have continuity and we're not overly reliant, but we're investing large enough with the right number of platforms so that we can build something that suits where we're trying to go and break new ground and really continue that operational excellence in those results for the business.
So speaking of partners and working closely with partners, having a more strategic relationship with them, your technology partners are no doubt a critical component of your in-housing initiative. Can you talk a little bit about which functions of your programmatic stack you feel were important for marketers, yourselves included, to kind of own and operate? Why?
Own and operate or take on. So, we pretty much wanted to have direct relationships with all the partners and platforms between when we have a plan and start to do a campaign launch to when the ad gets served. Having been in all those places in the ad tech ecosystem, understood the value and potential of upside to what a partnership could be with each of those components. I think we had a unique path to which ones we started to engage with first and scale and the timeline in which we did it and potentially which partners we wound up scaling the most with. But we found that to be an extremely important opportunity to cut down on that bad game of telephone. Having been on even the SSP side and working with publishers, we knew that you didn't want to just deal with your DSP or a data provider. You really wanted to be working with everyone in that tech stack who could help you understand what's going on in that marketplace, how can you achieve your objectives better, and really provide that sort of transparency that everyone is seeking. But if you're not directly talking to those people and having a cadence and a relationship and incentives, you just have data and one view of the world, which I don't think is as useful as what we've seen once we've been working closely with DSPs, data, SSPs, publishers, all the platforms and people that we need to make a successful campaign.
So you mentioned working closely with SSPs. Obviously, that's one thing that is near and dear to me. What we have found is that the larger DSPs have historically maintained an agnostic posture towards SSPs. And while they give buyers some basic tools to select SSPs, in practice, those tools don't really allow traders to discern the relative value of SSPs. So traders just typically opt into all SSPs, which means that budgets can get diluted over costly and low quality supply paths. As you and your team have studied the supply chain and worked with SSPs and gotten, again, sort of that game of telephone, you've overcome that. Like, have you seen that there is differentiation in the SSPs that can materially impact your KPIs? And is that something that you're making more important in your effort?
Absolutely. I think we are looking across the SSPs and just the daisy chain, flow of how many partners and which partners a ad impression skips along to finally get to us. And so, it is a nuanced and complicated environment in which to work in and to understand how to best work with SSPs. Having that experience working at an SSP previously was definitely an advantage into understanding the right path for us. But what I can say is, it's definitely a technical, at least, approach that we took in understanding how DSPs work and how they operate when you have a large number of SSPs. And then if you want to have a larger relationship with fewer SSPs and really build something with them and not just put every exchange into what you're buying or spend against evenly, you should work in a way that doesn't disrupt how the DSP works, but at the same time gets you to where you want to go. And then that's sort of a cryptic way of saying there are supply optimization tools, there are agreements, there are many levers you could kind of pull to get to where you want to get. But the one thing that is constant, having a few key strategic SSP partners is extremely important. Having people there that you're talking to, an ongoing cadence, and a structure of a direct agreement and a business agreement, so that you are getting the most out of those media that runs on programmatic. And I would not necessarily just take a headline from a trade. I think you really want to dive deep with your DSP and with these exchanges to really flush out and test and learn and make sure you do a thorough job, that you're not just cutting out and doing what might logically make sense. You have to take into consideration, one, that you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of publishers, all with different setups on their back end. You have a DSP that is just built and used to having so many exchanges plugged into it. And so you just want to make sure that you're adjusting how you technically operate in a way that moves you forward and doesn't have unintended consequences. But again, that people relationship, and as well as having hiring and access to technical expertise, are the two components that are key to success here. I would definitely recommend working closely with an ASP to all marketers.
Well, great. So I'd love to get into some more recommendations, but I am mindful of time. Are we ready to move into the audience Q&A, or do we have a few more minutes for some advice and recommendations? All right. Well, I'm going to continue then. So, Paul, before we get to the audience Q&A, can you share with others in sort of birds of a feather, other marketers that are bringing in-house their buying and their execution? What are some of your main recommendations? I know you shared a bunch of them throughout the course of this conversation, but you were kind of say, like, what things you wish you knew when you got started, what would those be?
I would say, measuring what matters and making sure that as much as possible you're getting reporting and measurement and doing some of the unsexy things at the start in order to prepare your data and prepare yourself for operations. It's not necessarily headline worthy or the most rewarding work, but the taxonomy work, the reporting and dashboards and metrics that you're seeing, and the plan and approach you're taking to testing and scaling, all that upfront work is extremely valuable and important down the line. The second thing I would say is hiring, and to start early, working with your HR and sourcing team, and being in a position to bring on the right talent with the right background. And in many cases, it's not necessarily a pure brand career path or agency career path background, and having that diversity of thought and a diverse team to contribute is just the other pillar and key to success. That is not a silver bullet. I worked with this platform or this tactic, or I now have this database, but it is essential, I think, to getting successful, gaining momentum, and sustaining the changes that you've made long term.
And as you make those changes, I imagine you start with endorsement from leadership, but then you need to continue to build and cultivate that endorsement through the successes and the wins that you put on the board. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like, and how do you recommend that other marketers really, because it's such a big change, right, to bring things in house. How do they really speak to that internally?
What we've found is making sure that you spend the time to educate the organization, and not just having the top-down leadership, but really using every additional headcount that you have in order to build and maintain relationships with advocates and people who are really interested in the digital marketing space and are leaning in, and who may have a particular business problem or problem with their brand, and really spend the time to work with them, educate them, and enable them to ask for the funding and resources and support and what they need in digital. And that's been key, as we start off with a centralized place and figuring out what to do, and then transitioning it to the brands and other stakeholders, and they may not be as fluent in it. They might not understand all the terminology and acronyms, but if they can become conversant in it and apply it to their brand and start to explain the ways that they're going to execute it and what's been proven out and the data behind it, that has been key as the next step from that initial top-down support and recommendation.
Let's see, Maureen, are you hopping in here?
I am hopping in here. We are just about out of time, but if there's an audience question, we can handle one more. Otherwise, we can just wrap it up.
Okay, well, looks like we have one. I think there's a question about, and if you're comfortable sharing it, how is e-commerce managed within your organization?
Sure. So e-commerce has expanded significantly, in that it probably used to be mostly Amazon, or heavily weighted towards Amazon, but there is a significant growth in e-commerce, as you've seen from retailers, from these reports over the last few quarters. And so we absolutely handle that in-house, both all the operational and back-end side of things, from the content on product pages and supply, and how we operate just within the dynamics of a marketplace, and come up organically in search results, as well as the paid media and promotion. And that is something that we started working on midway through this journey and late last year, and have ramped up probably significantly faster than our initial plan, just given where e-commerce has gone and how explosive it's been. But that is something now where we've broken down some silos and are really looking at our media and our operations holistically across brick and mortar, club, e-commerce, and all those places, and do it in-house.
Thanks for fleshing that out. I don't see any additional questions, so I will. I'll just say thank you so much, Paul, for sharing all of your insights. Next time we do this, I really hope that there is octopus and tequila, but I will settle for fresh air and natural light, for sure. Take care, my friend, and be safe.
Likewise. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And thank you both, Paul and Mark, for closing out such an amazing day on in-housing. A special thank you to all our speakers for such engaging and insightful conversations today. I know I personally learned a lot from each session, And thanks to these speakers, people who work in creative, strategy, and media roles in-house have been given great insight and tactics that they can bring into practice at their workplaces. As I mentioned at the beginning, today's event will be available on demand. We will send a follow-up email with this information later on once this ends. We hope you will all join us again for our next Brand Innovators livecast tomorrow at 1 p.m. ET for our first ever McAfee Growth Marketing Summit. We'll be joined by marketing leaders from Taco Bell, McAfee, Third Love, Marriott, PepsiCo, and more. Thank you for joining, everyone, and we hope to see you again soon.